Hello and welcome. My guest tonight is Stephen Mosborg, and he is a wonderful, well-known Midwestern photographer. And I am very intrigued to sort of connect the work he does, which is taking photos mostly outdoors, nature showing its beauty, and helping, I think, all of us appreciate beauty. But I'm tying that in my mind to the fact that right now, 2025, we're taping in April, it's a really stressful time for most people, I think, in our country and even in the world. And there is something about nature and doing things that bring us pleasure that I think really can counter some of the stress. So we're counting on you, Stephen, to reduce the stress for all of us.
Big job, but I'll try.
Okay. Stephen is a Minneapolis man.
Yes, born and raised.
And you've done photography for years and years, but when did you first start?
Yeah, I think I have to start with my gene pool. I was very blessed. I had a wonderful mother and father who are no longer with us, but they were world travelers. Both worked, had just 2 children. My sister was younger than I am, and we saw the world. And then my father was a photographer. He learned photography, black and white photography, as a paratrooper between the World War II and the Korean conflict. And then so when he kind of got on with his life, he actually had a passion for photography. And so he never taught me, but I just observed and watched kind of what he did, how he did it, composition, lighting. And then he did some slideshows for people like Audubon, Camp Natch, and that type of thing. And then he had one exhibit in his lifetime, which was at my faith community, that we revisited 12 years after he had his show. We did a 3 generations show.
Oh, wow. So, yes, I read about that, I guess, on your website.
So that was sort of the start. But it really didn't really blossom. I had one of my dad's hand-me-down film Nikon cameras, like when I started to travel the world on my own. I was bicycling across the country in my teens, and then saw a lot of the world on my own. But it really was then when I came back from a stint over in Europe where I bought myself my first digital camera, which was a Canon Pocket digital camera.
Right.
Do you remember those?
I do. I had one.
Before cell phones were really popular, and also had the technology just to basically do what we do now with our smartphones. And so that's where it kind of picked up a little bit, and that's where it kind of blossomed, and then it blossomed even more when then I got my first really full Android cell phone that was really quite capable from a photography standpoint.
So right now you're mainly using your cell phone?
So no. So what I did, so kind of 2019 was sort of a turning point for me, I think, in my photography, in that it was basically my daughter, my faith community, and then it was COVID that basically kind of changed this whole dynamic for me. First, as my daughter was getting older, she was a big runner, much like your daughter, was on the Edina team in both track and cross country. She went to Carleton. She was a big runner there. She went to Northwestern. And I just found that my cell phone really wasn't quite enough. I loved to be her cheerleader, and I love to take photographs, right? So then I basically upgraded to basically the Sony line of cameras that are kind of more professional grade, and then invested in some lenses. And then for the first time I went to Tanzania in 2022 with a woman and her husband, who are dear friends of mine and neighbors in my community, who have been going since 2008. We were supposed to go in 2020, and then COVID hit. So that's where I had my first 100 to 400 millimeter lens, and I sort of upgraded for that trip, and I haven't looked back since. But to answer your question, is I'm about 50% cell phone in my pocket, and then 50% with my camera gear.
Well, I would have assumed you had a camera that was beyond the cell phone.
Yeah.
But he brought a photo that I'm going to show you, and I maybe should show you right now, that you took with your cell phone.
I did.
And
yeah.
so the cell phones do wonderfully
They really
good
can.
work now.
Yeah.
But
Especially with
I'll
a little
hold
bit of
this up
post-production.
right now, I think, just
Sure.
to give people a feel
Yeah,
for
and then
it.
we're going to turn it around because
Oh, is
the
it?
ice. Yeah, the other
Oh,
way. Because
okay.
the ice is there. We go. Because it's actually
Yeah,
those
it-
are
it does
icicles
help to
actually
have it.
on the ice.
Have it up, have it in the correct.
Yeah. Yeah.
So explain what this is and how you came upon it.
Yeah.
We should almost have you guess what you think.
Yeah.
this
So I
is,
think
but-
it kind of plays into what you kind of said in your opening statement about the finding the little details, you know, when you're out and about,
Right.
and also paying attention, right? Is you know, a lot of people will run or bike around the lake, and you know, a lot of times they'll kind of like miss the sunrise or whatever. And so this was actually just literally on a walk around Lake Harriet in the early spring. And what had happened is there was a kind of a big snowfall that hit all of where it landed on the trees. And then over a day or two, then it started melting off the trees onto very thin ice that was really about only 6 feet off of the shore.
So these are drops.
These are drops, in other words, of the snow that became drops that started to hit the ice, and then they basically piled up because it just got cold enough. And then,
So there was this short window.
yeah,
I'm guessing, right?
very short window, in other words. And I've never seen anything quite like this before or since. This was taken about probably 5-6 years ago now.
So
And
I
it's
think
part of what I call an
amazing.
icicle formation series. It was a whole series of beautiful pieces that I found
It's
there.
a lovely, lovely
Thank you.
thing. And just talk a little bit about the details that you see through the eyes of a photographer, because I think we walk around, I know I do, and often don't look up at the clouds or
Yeah.
don't look at the flowers, you know,
Yeah.
all of that. But I'm guessing you are more purposeful in terms of paying attention.
Yeah, and I
right?
think that's really true. And I think in a way, I also learned that from my father a little bit. We also had to learn patience with my dad when he was basically getting distracted. But you know, there is something. I think there's kind of an artist mindset and an artist eye, whether it be that you're working with oils or photography or watercolor, that should to kind of be out in nature. You're just always searching, and whether it's in my car after a snowfall and I'm going down Minnehaha Creek, down the Parkway, I'm always looking. I'm really trying to pay attention to the road, but I'm always looking.
That's
And also
interesting.
when I'm hiking, and then also I'm very purposeful oftentimes after a snowfall to, for example, go down to Minnehaha Falls and take some photos and videos, or during the winter go to the North Shore, or for the last 2 years I also made winter trips to Yellowstone and got some amazing photos there. So there's kind of purpose in daily life, but then there's also sort of purpose in deciding to basically get dressed and go somewhere.
Right.
And then paying attention when you get there.
Right.
I call myself almost more than a photographer, I call myself a visual storyteller. And oftentimes I'll be putting photos and then with a quote or a poem or a backstory, and then I just kind of compile that and then share that with the rest of the world.
Yeah, that is a neat addition to the photograph, to have
Yeah.
a pertinent poem or a special quote.
Even at my exhibits, I will have oftentimes when I have a large framed 13 by 17 that's a photo in a large frame, I will, you know, in terms of, it'll have the name and the price, but I'll also often put a quote with it as well. And people seem to appreciate that.
The study that caught my eye most recently about stress said that the number one, number one antidote, in a sense, to the stress we are feeling, collectively or individually, is to be in nature. So are you in a less stressed mood because of, you think, your focus on detail and your love of nature?
Well, I mean, a couple of things. One is that all of this sort of dovetailed when I basically was about to retire anyway, which was basically 4 years ago. So being retired has helped in terms of stress level and,
That's
the
true.
whole nine things.
So it's hard to know.
Yeah. And then I also have some kind of mantras. I thought maybe I would share a couple of quotes with you just about sort of things that are kind of my mantras, both in terms of how to see nature in the world, and then also about this thing about trying to be less stressful and to what I say, be the light. Should I share them with you?
Sure, this is a good time.
Yeah. So the first one is, quote, everybody needs beauty as well as bread, places to play in and pray in, where nature may heal and give strength to body and soul. And that's from our beloved John Muir, who was one of the very first, and he was instrumental in establishing Yosemite National Park and also the Sierra Club.
And wasn't he considered kind of the leading environmentalist
Yes.
of his era?
And also that he was an author too, and he, I mean,
Right.
he's quoted all the time,
Yeah,
especially in photography settings because
I
of,
bet.
he has just so many quotes of, he's like, he says a walk in the trees is like walking, into the universe, kind of a thing.
Do you want to read it one more time, Stephen?
Yeah.
Because it's so special for our time, I think.
Yeah. Everybody needs beauty as well as bread, places to play in and pray in, where nature may heal and give strength to the body and soul.
Yeah, that's a great quote.
Yeah.
That's a great quote.
And then I have my other favorite one, which has a little bit more to do with the stress level and sort of how we can still try and find our light.
Okay.
This is by Thich Nhat Hanh, who was a Vietnamese Buddhist monk. We lost him in 2022. He was a prolific author, poet, and teacher, and is often referred to as the father of mindfulness.
Oh.
Thich Nhat
Can
Hanh.
you spell his name again?
Yes, Thich Nhat Hanh. It's Thich, middle name Nhat, Nhat, last name Hahn.
Okay.
And so see if this resonates with you. And I'll just say this to you. This, my dear, is the greatest challenge to being alive. To witness the injustice in the world and not let it consume our light.
So that is very pertinent for today, isn't
I
it?
sort of feel that way, yeah.
Yeah, and so he was the father of mindfulness, which
Yeah, they
is
give
also
him
a wonderful, relaxing
Yeah.
technique, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I think there's enough darkness, and you kind of said in your intro, there are a lot of people who are either not paying attention or are in a sense there's a lot of in our society with 24/7 news. They have the news channel on all day long in the background and whatever. I actually don't watch television. I get all my news sources from reading.
Oh, really?
And
Okay.
and I think so many studies have said the best way to reduce your stress level is to get outside.
Well, that's,
Get
I keep
outside.
hearing that, and I totally believe it.
Yeah.
I remember when I was running a lot and just out in the woods a lot on the trails.
Yeah.
I kind of thought to myself, I can't exercise and worry at the same time. They're incompatible.
That's right.
And there's something wonderful about that because you put aside
Yeah.
whatever might be bothering you
Yeah.
and gnawing at you, and you
Yeah.
just let it go.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
get this free hour or half hour or whatever,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And then, also
Yeah.
being out in nature, nature is way more patient than we are. And so when you kind of get closer to nature and be more present in mind and be patient, I think it's a winning combination for a lot of people.
And that's another benefit. I mean, there are some real clear benefits from going into photography or anything where you really have to, I guess, focus.
I really think so. I have some dear friends who are plenum artists. They basically get their easel, much like Van Gogh did, get out into the fields, winter, summer, rain, shine, whatever, set up their easels and paint. They paint, what they see.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think there's a lot of truth to that.
I think that the image of being a photographer is pretty romantic. It's quite idealized, perhaps.
Huh.
But there have got to be, and I'm sure that our some hard and not so fun parts in the whole profession of photography.
Well,
and
I think
what are some of those?
Yeah, I think what I would say about that is that, because this is my semi-retirement passion, right? And I only just call it semi-retirement because of the things that I have actively going on with my photography, right? But I think the stress level in photography. I loved your quote there, your idea about glamour. I never really thought about it as being glamorous, but I think it's when, and this is what why my father held back on being a photographer, and I've also held back, is never, to actually be a professional photographer and be on a schedule, and there's a lot of people choose to be like wedding photographers.
Right.
I mean, I God love them, but that's the last thing that I would want to do, right? Because then I think you bring in responsibility, stress,
expectations
expectation.
of others.
Is the client's going to like this photo
sure.
and whatever? Now I get that a little bit in some of my commission work, but it's just at my own pace, and so it's very easy to share. And the commission work that I do for clients, they're always so appreciative that it's not really that same thing. And then also I think, for example, if you're a staff photographer, dear woman who's a photographer with the Star Tribune, and I think she really loves her work. But you have deadlines, and you need to show up, and you need to catch the scene, and any time of day or night. So I think that's where it's kind of from taking it from a passion to a profession. I think is when the stress level kind of ratchets up, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So there's a definite benefit of having it as a hobby, but in your sense, it pretty much has become a work career mode for you too, isn't it?
But with just not a lot of stress with it, because I don't have huge
You've kind
deadlines.
of controlled that, right?
I control,
Yeah.
when I'm going to have exhibits, how much time I have in advance. And then kind of the latest that we're doing now for the first time, my daughter and I are leading we're very excited about it. We're leading a total of 16 like-minded world travelers that are going to join us on a photography safari in Tanzania and Zanzibar
I heard about that.
in June of this year, and we're excited. That's the first one, and it's gone so well on the lead up that I'm quite sure I'll be doing more of them. We're talking about Iceland in 2026, and maybe Yellowstone in winter 2026, 2027 as sort of the next steps.
When you mention Iceland and you mention going to Africa, you've got a photo that I think we'll insert here.
It's actually a cheetah.
So I need to know, how close were you? I mean, you weren't as close as it looks, were you?
And so where you get that is, and that's where this long lens idea comes into place, and that's why I made the investment, is that most people can get by, especially if they're just posting on social media with their cell phones, right? And they're also capacity for zooming in and not getting it degrained and keeping focus is getting way better on cell phones. So I would say, for example, 80% of the people on the safari to Africa are going to be using only their cell phones, right? But what I like about the longer lenses and the better equipment is that then when you're going to actually blow up the photos and use in exhibits, 13 by 17 of a moving animal on a cell phone can be a little bit grainy and fuzzy, right? And that's kind of where the professional photography equipment comes in. But almost all of the photography that you're doing in Africa is out of a safari vehicle, and they're all 99% of them are Toyota Land Cruisers, many of them with many years and many miles on them.
I bet.
But what they have is they have pop-up roofs, and then even above where the drivers are, they have kind of like two pop-up areas, and then there's a rail system all the way around so that you can hold a long lens almost like a tripod. When you say, driver, let's stop, we're gonna focus in, and then you use the rail system with your long lens
that would be
to capture the
important
moment.
to keep it nice and steady.
Capture
Do you do your own developing?
No, I have been using for many years, actually since I kind of got more involved with this since in 2019. I've been using Linhof Photo. They used to be on 44th and France in southwest Minneapolis, and Jim Linhof moved the business to Excelsior Boulevard, larger facility, and that's where they've been ever since. And they do 100% of my
okay.
printing, because it's the quality of the printing is really important.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Do you use any color enhancement?
So
because that's one of the things that people do
well,
know.
and then also, the issue and the rub now is, how people are using AI. It's like taking a picture of the North Shore and, well, let's add some birds here and some flowers
to me,
over here.
It's so disappointing.
Yeah, I mean, I just can't go there. But what I do, people often ask. That's a good question. People often ask, Steve, how do you get the richness in your photographs? I usually always stop down the shutter speed by about 1 stop to basically have it be a little bit underexposed. So that's number one. And then also in post, I will do it either on myself, because cell phones have amazing abilities to basically kind of change the color and saturations and the darkness and the light in your photographs with contrast, by example, and saturation. And so I'll either do that on my cell phone for my cell phone pictures, and then I'll do it on like desktop publishing with like Photoshop for my larger prints.
Okay.
So everybody is you won't find a photographer anywhere that isn't like tweaking their photos. But tweaking is a little bit different than changing coloration or adding things that weren't there.
You get up, I'm guessing, pretty early.
Oh, you've noticed that,
because on his Facebook page, he shares some about, I don't know Steve very well, but I do feel I know you pretty well because of reading and watching your beautiful work.
Thank you.
So are you up and out and looking for photos every day or most days? Or?
So what in Monster, I am like a farmer.
Okay.
Is that I'm usually early to bed.
Early to rise.
I mean, 9:30, 10 o'clock is, at my age, is kind of pushing it, right? And anything past 10 o'clock is way late, right?
Okay.
But I'm watching the sunrise time. And I'm always make sure that I'm at least up a half hour before sunrise.
Oh, wow.
And then also I'm watching the weather forecast to say, like, for example, if there's going to be no clouds in the morning, I mean, sure, you can get a nice sunrise with no clouds, but it just, at my stage, and it just doesn't have the imagination of trying to get something where there's, like 69, 79% cloud cover, and that sun comes up free of the clouds, but then highlights all the clouds in the sky.
And that's the beautiful.
Yeah, and that's both sunrise and sunset. But that's what I do is I'm very blessed to live on Lake Harriet with 11 windows that overlook Lake Harriet and the Bandshell. So I just have to get up, make my coffee, go to my front window and say, so is this going to be a morning when anything's going to happen or not?
You get a read on it, right?
I get a read on it right away. But even when I'm traveling, I really, and Amanda's learned this about me as well, is I will oftentimes get up earlier than she will, just because I really want to make sure and catch that sunrise wherever we're traveling together.
So you are disciplined. You are disciplined. That's admirable.
Yeah, I don't, discipline, I think, it's sort of a good way to say it would be routine or habit now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, they all work. They all work. We're almost out of time, Stephen.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
You've had water as a theme for some of your photos, and you've written some beautiful things about water. Can you just give me a minute and a half of some of your thoughts about water? Because I agree, water is our a huge benefit here on our globe.
We and also in Minnesota with the land of 10,000 lakes and all of our rivers and creeks, we have a tendency to kind of take it for granted. But then when you go to a place like Tanzania and you realize just how scarce, and many other places in the world where water can be scarce. But I think what I focus on is the power of water. And in nature, water has sculpted everything. The glaciers that when they receded across all of North America, every lake we see, all the Great Lakes, they were all sculpted by water, i.e. ice, that basically melted away and carved it out on their receding. And that's exactly what's going on in Iceland. And unfortunately, much like in Glacier, Mount Rainier, which I've climbed Mount Rainier a couple of times, is that, you know, the ice sheets are fading.
And Greenland too.
And Greenland too.
We have 2 minutes left. I want to get from you how people could find more of your work.
Oh, thank you.
Learn more about what you're doing.
Yeah.
You've got a website.
Yeah.
Give us the name.
Yeah, it's Mosborg Exposures, oneword.com. So it's pretty easy to find. And then there are several categories. There's a shop, there's also about our upcoming travel adventures and that type of thing. And then it's very easy to find me on social media. I've been on Facebook since 2009. And I'm just at Stephen Mosborg, and it's a public site, so you can go and view it.
And
it's not
you
private.
have photos on all the time.
Photos, yeah. In other words,
Yeah.
I post about, on social media, I post about four or five times a week with a photo, a story, and a poem or a quote. And then also on Instagram and then on Threads, which is my newest vehicle, it's at just at S. Mosborg. And then one last thing, people can find me if they'd like. I'm also a Google guide. I'm a reviewer.
So all kinds of places.
Yeah, I've reviewed now. The very first one I did was Wilderness Legends, the first time we went to Africa in 2022. That was the first review I wrote. And now I'm up to 345, and they've been viewed by 34 million people.
On that note, we have to say goodbye, but I don't think we'll have 34 million. But
Well,
thank you.
I know you have that many followers and viewers, so I'm sure it will work out.
Well, thanks so much,
Well,
Stephen.
thank you, Murph. Thank you for having
It's been
me.
really interesting, and
Oh, wonderful.
doesn't it make you want to be a photographer?
It's been a pleasure.
It does me. Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you
and thanks
so
for
much.
the invitation.
Of course.
Okay.
I'll be back next week. Until then, have a good week, and open up your eyes like he does, and observe and pay attention. Bye-bye.